This is Your Money, your weekly guide to making the most of your cash, here every weekend on BBC News Television. Available all week on the BBC iPlayer. Billions more in spending cuts. We'll look at the impact on families of Chancellor George Osborne's review. Under investigation, the payday loans industry faces a fresh probe into the way it targets customers. And why a better understanding of credit card jargon can save you hundreds of pounds. But first, news came this week that there's to be another round of government spending cuts totalling £11.5 billion. The Chancellor George Osborne has promised that they will fall on the broadest of shoulders. But some charities are concerned that the biggest losers of this latest financial squeeze will be families. Well, let's have a chat now to Anne Longfield, who's the Chief Executive at the charity For Children and joined us from our studio in Leeds. So, Anne, you say that it's really going to affect families the most. What are you particularly concerned about?
Well, I think this is a disappointing week for families. I would hope that they were going to get some respite from the Chancellor and hope that they were going to get some very positive messages. We know that families have been bearing the brunt of the spending cuts so far, especially those with children, and it looks like that's going to continue. There have been some notable exceptions, more help for families who are in difficulties, troubled families, and some more help for early years for 3- to 4-year-olds and 2-year-olds. But there are some really hard messages for families, not least around reductions in terms of benefit caps, not least in terms of the amount of time they're going to have to wait if unfortunately they actually lose their job. And there's also worries around those lone parents who are now going to have to start preparing for work without support very early on. But I think the biggest worry for families will really be those cuts in local services that just doesn't seem to be ending. 10% more from local government budgets means that the services they're relying on locally, such as Sure Start centres and other real community centres and facilities, are just going to start to become more and more vulnerable.
Now, I know you've highlighted this 7-day wait before people who have lost a job can access benefits, but of course this is brought in to try and encourage people to actively seek a job much more, because the government believes that perhaps this lag could mean that they'll just rely on the fact that they can get benefits in just 3 days.
I think the last thing that most families with children want to do is rely on benefits. They want to get out to work and bring that much needed income in. But I think we have to look here. This is half a week's salary for families at a really difficult time where a really devastating has happened, and we would like government to take out those families with children from this requirement. It does seem that it's children who will suffer here, and it will make a big difference.
Also, I know that there's been a lot of talk about the payday loans industry this week. We're going to be covering it later on the programme. What would you say to families who are struggling so that they avoid possibly having to take out high interest loans to see them through a few days or weeks?
Well, we know that there's an awful lot of families who are feeling on the edge and are running out of money. About 2/3 of families say that, according to a NetMum survey. And we know also about 1/4 of those are getting into debt and are looking to loans, and sadly sometimes payday loans. I think that it has to be something that families very much guard against. It is storing up problems for the future, and we know that some of the payday loans arrangements absolutely don't work in the favour of families at all. It is going to compound debt. They have to talk to banks, they have to talk to their employers, they have to talk to friends and families. Don't go to payday loans. Okay,
Anne Longfield from Charity For Children, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And we're talking about the payday loans industry. It's a business that's growing fast, and for many it provides loans when the banks won't. But this week, payday lenders found themselves under the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. The Office of Fair Trading raised more concerns about some of its practices, and on Monday, Consumer Minister Jo Swinson will host a summit looking at the issues facing the industry. But is there a time when payday loans are the right option? Ramzan Kamali has this report.
The adverts are everywhere. You'll find them on the web, on mobile phones, and even on the front of football shirts.
And now the payday lenders have got the attention of the authorities. This week, the Office of Fair Trading referred them to the Competition Commission. And for some, it comes as no surprise.
It's a way of getting quick money out of those people who doesn't have. That's the way I look at it. To put them more in debt rather than helping them.
You get a loan, on supposedly your wages that you haven't been paid yet, and then when you get your wages, they take it back with interest, and then you're constantly doing that.
Everyone that takes out a payday loan ends up in lots of debt.
It's just a rip-off.
But the industry is growing fast and the numbers are pretty impressive. There are currently 240 payday loan firms operating in the UK, and around 2 million people use them. This means that the industry is worth around £1.8 billion a year. So perhaps there is a place for them in society.
It should be for things like emergencies, you know, your washing machine breaking down, car repair, not for something maybe such as going to a concert, going out with friends. And that when you enter into it, you know what the costs are going to be, and when the repayment date is due, that you will have the full amount to repay.
Many experts believe there are other options before you end up using a payday lender. And in fact, next week, the industry comes under scrutiny as politicians look at ways to stop their worst practices. Ramzan Karamali, BBC News.